Absolutely.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning. It is 8 a.m. on Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. We will call the Economic Development Authority annual meeting for the City of New Ulm to order. At this time, item number 1 is the roll call. We do have a quorum, so we'll move on to item number 2.1, which is our annual election of officers. At this time, I would recommend some minor changes to the executive team for the EDA. I've been serving as president for the past year, but do see an opportunity for others to step up and take on this role. I feel that it is somewhat of a conflict for me to be serving as president of the EDA and the council, and that there are other qualified citizens that can run these meetings and make these decisions. At this time, I would recommend Michelle Margraf for president.
I'll offer that nomination.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion does carry. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you. In the role of vice president, we have Shar Kalk, who has indicated she'd like to continue. And so unless there are any other nominations, I would look for a motion to retain Ms. Kalk as vice president.
Make a motion to retain Shar Kulk as vice president.
Second.
We do have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion does carry. And I believe that the last role would be the treasurer for the EDA. In conversations, I would be willing to serve as treasurer, but if there is someone else that would like to serve in that role, we can.
I would like to nominate Andrea Becker for the role of secretary treasurer.
Thank you. We do have a motion.
I'll second.
And a second. Any additional discussion? Lindsay, would you have any interest in serving as treasurer, or as treasurer?
I would be fine learning, but I don't have a strong inclination either way. So
Okay.
I'd be fine with you doing that for now, and we can kind of
Okay.
relook at it in the future. So
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion does carry. That brings us to, we covered items 2.2 and 2.3.
Madam Chair, I believe the president would be taking over the rest of this meeting.
Oh, well, there we go.
Wow.
Oh, at this time, I will graciously pass the gavel to President Markgraf.
Thank you for your service over the last year, too, as president.
Thank you.
We are at Agenda Item 3.1, EDA December 12th, 2023 minutes.
I'll offer a motion to approve those minutes.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4.1, Administrative Activities, December 2023 report.
All right, good morning to our new president, Mark Graff, and
Thank you.
commissioners. You have the report in your packet. Just a couple items to highlight. Note under the EDA fund that the City Council recently approved a transfer of funds that they received from the American Rescue Plan to the EDA in the amount of roughly $83,000. I believe the intent of that was to help with the cost of Westridge Place. So that's a nice influx of cash, much needed. So we appreciate that. Thank the City Council for doing that. And under the multifamily rental rehab loan program, 2 applications were received, both in the amount of $50,000. So when we renew funds for the year, basically $100,000 is already spoken for. So that would leave $50,000 available for another loan. Those are all the highlights I had. So that's the end of my report, unless there are any questions.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I had a question in regards to those loans. What was the activity like last year versus the two
For
applications?
the multifamily loan program. So we had $150 available last year. We did 2 loans for $50,000 each and one for $25,000.
Okay.
So we had $25,000 at the end of the year.
Okay.
That'll carry over, and then we'll take into account the loan payments that have been received, and we'll just ask to take that back up to the $150,000 for the new year.
And then my next question is, do you feel like the applicants, now that it's the beginning of a new year, that they waited because they knew the funds weren't available?
No, they actually applied in December. And I also, at the end of the year there, received a early loan payoff.
Okay.
So I actually had enough money in December to fund one of those loans.
Sure.
But being they're not closing until
Right.
January, they're
Yes, they're in this year. Okay.
carried over to the new year. Mhm.
Okay, great. I was just curious on that. All right, thank you.
My question was on, and I've talked about this before, is how often are we purging the lists?
We do that every year. Usually we start May 1st. And so it takes a month or two to get those cleaned up. So by July,
We do
that's
it one
usually.
time per year.
We do it once a year. Mhm.
Thank
It's a
you.
lot of work for staff, so
Yeah,
I'd like to keep it that way.
okay.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the EDA January, or Economic Development Authority Activities Report for the month of December 2023.
Oh, that's new. I'll second.
Thanks.
And a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 5.1, EDA January claims list.
I thought there was something I had a question on, but.
Okay, I'm lost. Yeah. Oh, one more, I just didn't push enough.
Hearing none, I'll offer a motion to approve those expenses.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6.1, Homeowners Assistance Loan Program.
All right, so this is the start of our renewal of funding for our programs for 2024. Like I mentioned, we're looking at our payments that have come in. We're looking at what's carrying over from the prior year. It looks like we would need to allocate $36,575 to bring this balance back up to $50,000 for loans in 2024. Now, this program, there's 5 years deferred payments, so we haven't actually received any payments yet unless someone sold their house and repaid their loan. We've had a few of those. Just going over the 2023 activity, 2 loans were repaid in full. 6 loans were funded in the total amount of $46,175. The average loan received in 2023 was about $7,700. 2024 will be the first year that first round of homeowners will start making payments. So we will notify them in advance to remind them that their payments are coming due, because it may sneak up on them. And then we'll work to get them set up for automatic payments, so it'll just come out every month automatically.
And it looks like those payments start, and when I was looking through that, in the middle of the year.
Yeah, I think the program started mid-year, so the first loans were in the second half of
I remember too.
2019.
We won't see a lot in 24, but
No.
we'll see a lot more in 25. 25 had a bunch coming in too, new
Yeah.
ones coming in too.
Yeah, every year thereafter, we did quite a few loans. Mhm.
Is this a motion or will it be a resolution? Since we are
That's a good question.
motion. Okay. I'm looking for a motion on item 6.1.
I'd make a motion to allocate 2024 funds in the amount of $36,575 for the Homebuyer Assistance Loan Program.
I'll
Second.
second that, yeah.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 6.2, Get It Ready Single Family Rehab Program.
All right. So we usually allocate $120,000 a year for this program for single-family homeowners to make various home improvements. We funded one loan in 2023 in the amount of $40,000. We have received loan payments to date in the amount of $15,000, just a little over. So as a result, we would ask for an additional $24,878.47 to bring the available balance back to $120,000 for 2024.
I'll offer that motion.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries. Item 6.3, Multifamily Rental Rehab Program.
Okay, and just a reminder, this loan program is for landlords to create or improve their rental properties. We usually allocate $150,000 to this program each year. 3 loans were funded in 2023 in the total amount of $125,000. Loan payments have been received to date in the just over almost $82,000. So as a result, we would ask for an allocation of $43,036.32 in order to bring the available balance back to $150,000 for 2024 loans.
I will make that motion.
I'll
To-
second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries. Item 6.4, Small Business Incentive Grant Program Changes.
All right. We had a work session after the December meeting and discussed some potential changes to the program, and so we were instructed to bring back some proposed changes for consideration. One of the changes we talked about was changing the grant amount from $10,000 to $7,500 per business. We talked about offering the grant funds on a quarterly basis instead of annually. And we also talked about creating a point system for applications, such as giving higher preference for childcare businesses, retail businesses, tying it to job creation and other such things. So I guess I'll open it for discussion, and Chris, jump in if I'm forgetting any of the options.
No, I think those are the options that are available. While you can create a point system, kind of a fourth option too would just be limiting the application to certain types of businesses would be a fourth option.
So in lieu of number 3, not being able to use a point system, but noting that these are for specific types of businesses, correct?
I would prefer that be the option instead of doing a point system, just limiting the number of businesses. That way the EDA and the city isn't picking essentially winners and losers of who gets grants. It's just, hey, we're limiting it to these businesses. These are the businesses we want to focus on attracting, and then.
Was there discussion at all about figuring out a way to get some more funding into this program so we can help more businesses open up?
So the only other way that I know you potentially can get funding for a program specifically like this is through the small cities grants or CDBG, but that severely limits what you can do with that grant, and New Ulm essentially doesn't have the census tracts available to even give that money out to businesses in the city.
So I know at least a few folks that I've talked with saying this money is primarily used for products. If they're going to open up a business, it's going to be to buy supplies to put them on the shelf. And $7,500 is not a lot of money. So I don't know. I'm kind of against reducing that amount, but on the other hand, I want to help more businesses. So it's kind of that balance there. I'd really like to try and figure out a way we can get some more funds into this 'Cause really, when you think about it, we're economic development, and that's exactly what this is. It's exactly what this is. And we've only lost 2 programs, right? 2 businesses?
No, over time it's been more than that. I don't have that with me. We've had 4 or 5 grant recipients close over the years, since 2019 when this started.
So I'm going to comment that I think that our community as a whole would be better served with being able to fund more. And if there needs to be a cap on it, it is great that they're used for products. But I think that if you are starting a business or a retail business, that we are not the bank, we're not that financial institution that needs to assess the risk on what, how that business could potentially fare. If you're opening a restaurant, like if it's something the market can tolerate, like we don't have a lot of criteria. We essentially have some very minimal criteria, and we're giving that business essentially a gift, something that doesn't need to be paid back. That being said, again, we don't take the role of that financial institution, but, it's something that this business needs to show that it is establishing. And so I really would like to limit it to certain types of businesses that are going to, number one, benefit the community that we have a need for, and that will do job creation, because that is the economic development piece. It's not selling a product per se. Those are my comments.
I don't have an issue with reducing it to 7,500. It is something we had discussed in the past. And I see this as more getting businesses to come to New Ulm rather than to another community. And if we can show that, yep, this is bringing in businesses, if I can go to New Ulm, I'm going to get $7,500 potentially, especially if I fall within the criteria that we designate. That's a win. If a business needs $7,500 in order to stay afloat for a few years, then we probably shouldn't be funding them anyway.
And I think kind of take this into perspective. Let's just say rent's $1,000 a month. They're basically getting a little over half a year free rent, and that's kind of what the program is. It's to help lessen a burden for them to start, not to, it's a startup grant. It's to help them start. It's not to keep them in business, if they need it. So again, this is kind of that, if they're starting a business solely because this grant is out there, that's maybe not the whole purpose of it. It's to, hey, I have the money, but this is going to help reimburse me. So I have, a $7,500 cushion in case something happens kind of thing. And that's why we ask for the receipts of these expenses. We're reimbursing them for their expenses. So they have that cushion.
I would love to weigh in on the subject, but the Christmas House has a pending application, so I'll abstain from the conversation and the vote.
At this point, would we want to kind of identify, or could we leave it to staff to identify based on kind of available data on what kind of the top, 5 or 6 industries would be for us, or do we need to set those criteria?
And would that be something that we would vote on every year maybe, or twice
could.
a year?
Well, yeah, we can
kinda like
revisit,
that
we can
idea.
revisit the program every year. Like, once we set this, it's not in stone, just kind of like the amounts and
I can tell you currently I have 14 applications on the waiting list. So we had talked about reducing to 7,500, doing 10 grants, getting $75,000. That would still mean 4 applicants wouldn't get funded this year, and we're only in January. So,
My next question is,
that into consideration.
say a business does get approved, but then they end up going out of business, like, before, so like during the application process, if they go out of business, even if they show the receipts, they wouldn't get reimbursed for that, correct?
That is correct.
Right, they'd have to, yeah.
And what is the probability that all 14 would hit the areas that we say that we want to fund? Or do you feel that we need to fund those 14 because they're already in the process?
That's a tough question to answer because I don't know what businesses you want to fund. So how would I answer that without knowing
Right.
that?
All of those who who applied of the 14, have they already been in business for 90 days? You know, are they all, those are all qualified
Right.
meeting criteria applicants?
Right.
Okay.
We don't accept the application until they've been open 3 months now. That was a change we made last year. So they all theoretically are eligible to be paid once I have funding available and, you know, whoever's at the top of the list would get funded first. They haven't all necessarily submitted their invoices and proof of payment, but I would work with them on that once I know who's going to be funded.
Sure.
Let's talk through the three before we make a motion, just to see that we're all in alignment before we start the motion. The first one, changing from 10,000 to 7,500, is that something we can have consensus on and build alignment
to
with?
Liz?
Yeah, I guess.
We can always change it later if we
Yeah.
find it's not working.
Well, and in the past, we have added more funding to this throughout the year, correct?
Yeah, we did.
And this is based on a $75,000 budget, correct?
Yes, we
Yes.
would, the next item, we'd up it to 75 to cover 10.
Yeah.
And then offering grant funds quarterly instead of annually was something we talked about at the last meeting. Does that add a lot of burden to staff? Looks like you're recommending we go to quarterly.
I'm not necessarily recommending that. That was something that was talked about at the work session, so that was something we brought back to be decided on.
I mean, when we have a waiting list like this, it doesn't really do anything to do quarterly because then you're just making the people that have already submitted wait potentially another 12 months to get paid if they're at the end. I think, you know, just when the money's available, it gets paid out. Yes, if it's done in January, it's done in January. But again, we can always look at that and, you know, it's still open to discussion at this point in time.
Chris and I had some discussion too on when the money is gone, do we continue to accept applications or do we just tell them we're out of money for the year? Do you want me to continue with a waiting list?
I would think so. I think we'd want to know how many are on that list. I mean, is there 3 or is there 30?
I guess it does show the demand for the program.
Right.
Right. I would actually say to give us an opportunity to kind of catch up. You know, I think like anything, I mean, with any pot of money, like when it's gone, you know, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what?
So if they meet the criteria, are they still, we're basically back to the first come, first serve once you meet the criteria?
Yes,
Right.
yes, that would be it.
And would it go in order of when the applications were received or when we have all of the information that we need to fund the grant?
I've been doing it by date received, you know, the date the application comes in, and then, you know, I collect once I've collected everything I need, that's when it's actually paid.
And I think that works because, again, basically you're pre-screening them and you're only asking for those receipts once you know we have the funds available. Because most of the time when you get an application, if there's funds, you would just go through the process, you know, at that point in time. So it's kind of, yes, you're pre-screened, you're eligible. We don't have money, you know, it's just how it's
And that's the
received.
same way we handle the loan applications. You know, I get the application, I date stamp it. I might not have all the other supporting documentation I need, but once I get the application, I consider that the date.
Then should we start accepting applications for the next year once our money's gone, like in November and then in December decide?
I mean, and that can be something that we look at too. You know, if once we're out of money, you know, we'll probably still have 4 essentially on the waiting list. But then if it's out, kind of rejecting applications until November or December, we can, you know, and having that as a period once we're out of money.
That's the way any traditional grant processes work, is if you know, aren't in by the deadline, then you have to wait for the new window to open. I don't know why we would want to operate differently. Again, I realize that this is a very in-demand program and that it's very good, but we're kind of in a cycle right now where we're trying to kind of figure out how to best maximize, how to kind of filter this back in, whether it's, making it specific to certain types of businesses. We're already reducing the amount. So, if we kind of have that set amount of that 75,000 or so, I think it does make sense to have an application window.
So I think that's something the board should set, when we're voting on these changes, include that, so that we have something to tell people.
And that way it's clear that we don't have somebody applying in March and we're saying, well, we already have 4 people that we need to fund for next year, and now you're on the list for the, if it's clear, this is when it's open. I don't know. I mean,
that sounds good and normal and fair.
right. To have that window, and that way people know, and they're not waiting, or there's not certain expectations. And again, that's how other grants work is, when the money's gone, here's the new cycle, here's when we have money available. We want to do everything that we can, but again, we're not a bank. It's a grant. So,
Yeah, and when this program was new, this wasn't a problem. This has been kind of a post-COVID phenomenon with just tons of people starting
It's a good
businesses.
problem.
It is
Yeah.
a good problem. It's a very good problem, but it creates challenges too. So.
I would see creating an annual process where we would today cut off, and we can certainly, if you want direction on when we want the window open, we can talk about that another time. But we can certainly say cut it off as of today, and then discuss further how we're going to go forward in the next year.
Okay. So any applications that come in after today, I would just tell them we're not accepting applications at this time.
well, and I don't think it looks good from our end to say, we have a certain amount of money allocated, but continue to apply. We want to, if we have that fixed amount and we already know it's gone, I think that our responsibility would be to figure out how we can effectively fund all of those this year and then start fresh in a new year. I don't know. Just the optics of it, I think, are better as opposed to telling people, nope, you got to wait for next year, and you might get funded and you might not, and we might make changes to it and we might not. But that gives us a year to deal with the pot of, with the 14 applicants that we have that are already qualified and open, and revisit this on how we can help them, help other businesses in 2025, if that makes any sense.
And then point 3, I've heard that we don't want to have a point system for the application, but more something where we tell you what kinds of businesses that we would like to fund? Or do you want to have that
and
input?
maybe
Put
we
it that way.
work on that for next year if we're going to fund the ones that I already have.
Okay.
We really don't need to decide that
No.
today.
Point system for today.
What are some of the criteria? I'm not sure I've ever seen those criteria.
So, open for 3 months. They have to visit with Wendy for SBDC training. They have to have a physical address, so it can't be a shared suite. So the physical. The only in-home business that's eligible is in-home daycare because that's a need. And then they just have to provide proof that they've spent up to that $10,000. And we usually ask for more than $10,000 in receipts in case there's non-eligible expenses. That way they can get that full grant amount.
But is there some criteria that would indicate that, I realize we've all seen businesses come and go because the business really wasn't legitimately needed. It was just an interest that somebody had and thought they'd open a business, and instead of serving the needs of the community. How do you deal with that sort of stuff?
That's again, that's the first come first serve, and that's what we're looking at. Potentially looking at limiting the type of business. Before it was we started getting a lot of hair, nail salons, kind of beauty boutiques and stuff like that. Where if we as the EDA want to look at, no, we really want to start focusing more on the retail, childcare, restaurants, that kind of stuff, then we can focus the grant to those businesses.
But who would make that decision then? Would you?
You as the
All
board.
of us?
Yes.
You as the board.
Okay.
Well, I'll attempt to make a motion and and get this going. Okay. So I make a motion to cut off the applications for the small business grant program, small business incentive grant program, beginning today. In order to fund the pending applications of qualified applicants that we've already received, and to revisit the criteria and the window in which we would open the funding opportunities for 2025, as well as allocate the $75,000 we have annually allocated to this program.
The funding allocation will be the next item.
Oh,
This is
sorry.
just changes
Okay.
to the program.
Same motion, less item number 6.5.
Plus the grant amount per person.
Plus the grant amount per person at $7,500 per business, with all current applicants qualifying for this cycle.
I'll second that for discussion, but you said all applicants. There's 14 applicants. We don't
Yes.
have enough for 14.
You can make that motion on the next item if you want to fund all 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or I can modify the motion to include the first 10 on the list, up to $75,000, with the option to revisit the funding for the additional 4 throughout the year.
I think really the only motion you're looking for is what is that amount per person? Because that would be the only change that you're proposing to the current program.
Okay.
I think that's the only motion you need to make at this point.
And the cutoff today.
And the cutoff
The
today,
cutoff,
maybe, yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So the 7,500 was in the original motion.
I'm seconding that.
Any further discussion, questions?
Clear as mud?
I think so.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion does carry. Item 6.5, Small Business Incentive Grant Program Funding.
Okay, now, now, Andrea. So I just kind of gave a history of the program. It was approved by the EDA in 2019. $50,000 was allocated in the first year, as well as the following 2 years. In 2022, $100,000 was allocated. If you recall, that year we had received some funding from a litigation that we were able to then award some additional grants that year. And then last year in 2023, due to high demand, $80,000 was allocated. As I mentioned, the demand for this program remains high with a current waiting list of 14 businesses. If you look under the primary issues, a total of 31 grants have been awarded to date. Here's the data Les was looking for. 84% of grant recipients are still in business to date, with 93.5% remaining open for at least 1 year. So that 84%, they didn't all open in 2019, so that's cumulative. The 93.5% would show the success rate for hitting that 1 year mark. So a couple different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, so
Could we
you
see that list next month? Who we have loans to and who failed out?
Well,
It's been
the list should be attached to the economic development report at the end of the agenda, but the ones that fell out wouldn't be on there.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
I can email that to you privately after the meeting.
Yes, fine.
So that would be technically 26 businesses are still open and 29 have reached the first year.
It's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Chris, what was the success rate when you've worked with this program in the past, much lower. I mean, we've done well.
Yeah, it was, we had roughly 50% of the businesses reach the first year, and then 50% of those dropping off to reach their second year. So businesses that we give a loan or the grants here have a very good success, very good success rate.
Yeah.
And typically, when you look at SBA, a lot of those other agencies, basically, if a business can get through the first year, they have a very good likelihood of having success moving forward.
And I would bet the contact with Wendy is huge.
Yeah.
They're not making critical mistakes early on in opening their business.
Yeah, and part of that too is we have Wendy use the conference room upstairs, so that way business owners know where City Hall is. She can introduce them to, planning and building, where to pay their utilities, kind of get some of that other information that a business owner would need to operate as well.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a motion.
Be abstaining from this one as well.
Now, here's where you'll make the decision if you want to fund 10 businesses and allocate 75,000, or if you want to allocate enough to fund all 14 on the waiting list to get that cleaned up. That's
105,000.
I would like to see that.
and Nicole, how financially does that look?
That should be fine.
Could
Where would the additional 30 come from?
It would just be coming from the EDA's fund balance, basically.
Okay. Well, I would
We
be,
would just make a transfer from Garden Terrace again to,
I would be in approval of that, because you don't want to allow somebody to apply for something that they think they're going to get and then we don't follow through.
And they got to wait a whole year.
Then they got to wait another whole year.
And we
I'd
can
support
start
that, too.
fresh going forward with a potential November application process. Let's get those people that have applied. I think that I would like to make, can I make that motion that we fund the, 105?
105.
5,000 to the Small Business Incentive Grant Program,
I'll second.
2024.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'll just mention that we did just get that money from the city, so that does kind of help with increasing this to 105,000.
And potentially, I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll get 2 next year, for the next year. Our downtown is thriving, and I like to keep that going.
Mm-hmm.
So,
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7.1, West Ridge Place donations.
Can I offer the resolution to accept the donations for the Westridge Place for the period of December 2024? It was Sid Signs, I believe, for $500.
From Sid Signs, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? This is a resolution. Director Brakel, please call the roll.
Commissioner Berg? We're voting on the
Okay.
accepting a
Resolution.
donation.
Sorry.
To accept the donation to Westridge
I
Place.
accept that, yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Kalk? Commissioner Bedker? Yes. Commissioner Schultz?
Yes.
And Commissioner Henn is abstaining. President
I
Markgraf?
don't think she would abstain from this one.
I'm still on the last item in my mind. Commissioner Henn?
Yes.
President Markgraf?
Yes, that motion carries. Item 9.1, new business resource, item 8.1, Economic Development Activity Report.
All right, you have the report. I'll just note that we held the ribbon cutting event at Westridge Place in December. That was very well attended. We had Senator Dames and Representative Torkelson there, which was nice. We have an open house scheduled for the public. That press release has been in the paper. That'll be the evening of January 18th. So if you weren't able to make the ribbon cutting and you want to get in there and see it, try and make it to the open house if you can. Under the Small Business Incentive Grant Program, note 2 applications were received in December. And then Wendy Anderson has submitted her report for the fourth quarter of 2023, and she is with us on Teams if you have any questions for her, or if you'd like her to talk about her report at all. Do we have Wendy?
Wendy, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Snowed in.
So Wendy, with being 2024, any changes coming in your world that we should be aware of?
Changes as far as,
Just what you do and what's happening.
okay, so nothing's going to change as far as the working with clients through New Ulm. I still have a lot of side contracts that I work with too, but that's always been. So as far as meeting with clients, it's still going to be the same. Actually, I have had quite a few meetings already this year with clients, so it's going strong.
Wonderful, thank you. I was at the childcare team video meeting. We kind of talked about disbanding and we kind of talked about waiting. You want to fill us in on that a little bit?
Yeah, the consensus from other members on the team is that they don't think we should disband. They think there is still work to do. I am working with First Children's Finance on updating our needs analysis now that Westridge Place is open. And then the school district had done a parent survey for the parents with children in the younger grades to get a feel for what their needs are for before and after school care and non-school days. And they got over 200 responses, and they're working on compiling those, and they were going to report back. So we're going to see if we can identify some new goals for the year and go from there. So when we have our meeting, is it this week, Thursday? I think we'll know more after we have that discussion.
And in this document, it mentions George's Ballroom. Can you fill me in on that?
Chris Kent, just before we go to that, I wanted to mention I recently did an interview with NPR News. They're doing a story on childcare in the state, so it's part of a bigger story, but they also did interview a few of the providers out at Westridge Place. They're specifically interested in the pod model concept. And so I don't know when that'll air, but when I find out, I'll let you know. And then Chris can
And then
go ahead.
George's project still moving forward. We'll probably have something for council to make a decision on Tuesday. I'm going to work with the Georgia Steering Committee to make sure they're okay with kind of the next step moving forward, but project is still on track to move forward, and demolition potentially could still take place this winter, but we'll see.
Thank you.
And do you want to update
Yeah.
on the mall?
Yeah, mall is kind of on its last leg, like I always say every single time I make an update on the mall. But we got the corrected deed from the state, so we're just verifying a couple small things so we can sign the quick claim deed and begin the process of moving the deed over to the developer and transferring funds and all of that. So hopefully in the next week or so, that should be completely finalized.
So the developer does not have current ownership.
Of the middle section, no. Of
They-
the other
they
two
own the other
pieces, yes.
two.
So we're in that last leg, and they'll own the middle section hopefully within the next week or two.
I mean, I think they're just waiting for the deed, right?
Yeah.
They have
Currently have
owned
it,
it, but they don't have
The only reason
the
I'm asking is I still get all the complaints about the junk underneath and
They purchased it, but they don't have the deed.
Yeah. So essentially, they've cleaned up a lot. I mean, if you've gone under there, they've cleaned up a lot. They just can't clean up the stuff that's under the centerpiece because they technically don't own it and it's not theirs. So once they get the centerpiece, they are just literally going to go in there and get rid of the stuff within 30 days of them having the
All right,
deed.
thank you.
So And then kind of one final update. So still working on the purchase agreement for the 3 lots over there. There was a couple issues that we had to work through. We think we've potentially fixed those issues. Our attorney has sent kind of the revised draft purchase agreement to them. If they're okay with everything in there, then we'll be able to sign that purchase agreement and get that those 3 lots sold. And then the last thing with the report would be the strategic planning session that you wanted. We're thinking of probably doing that as a special meeting because it's going to take at least 2 hours, if not a little bit more, to do strategic planning, looking at goals and things like that. So Heather will be sending out a doodle poll for that to see when availability would be. Looking end of January, beginning of February, somewhere around there.
One last question on, we're missing one board member and this is a new year. What are we doing with that position?
We don't have an open board member position.
Do we
Commissioner Black
Yeah.
is absent today. She was intending to attend, but she is under the weather.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
Chris, would that be a special meeting or would it just be a work session?
Just be a work session. Yeah,
Okay.
just be a work session.
I'll offer a motion then to accept the EDA activity report for December 23.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries. Item 9.1, New Ulm Business Resource and Innovation Center Year-End Report.
So before you have attached New Brick's end-of-year report. Again, I don't necessarily see anything in here, that's alarming. Looking at a lot of the accomplishments through there, it's a lot of house cleaning, getting programs set up, things like that. And so looking at the 2024 contract, he did send goals and objectives for New Brick, and we looked at that, but it wasn't in contract form, and that's why we don't have a contract. We were looking at December, and then it got pushed to January. Now it's going to be February. When we get that, Robert drafted service contract, took that information that were in those goals and objectives, and kind of laid something out. We sent it to their attorney. Their attorney looked at it, had a couple changes. So in February we'll have something. But once their attorney is okay, or our attorney's okay with those changes, we'll actually send that contract well ahead of time to you as a board, so you can look at what those goals and objectives or strategies are, and then look at the contract to make sure it has enough meat in there for you to get the information you need. But as you look in his report, they are noting that they are expecting this to be the last year of receiving potential funding from the EDA, at least for staffing. Potentially if they have a project moving forward, to me, that's something the EDA would, should spend their money, but would be more willing to invest in rather than human capital. So open up to any questions, but we should have a contract for you to review probably in the next week or so.
I see. Did we decide previously that we were going to be quitting funding for 2024? I don't remember that being stated, that we were saying that this is our last year.
No, but I've implicated to them and their board that potentially this would be the last year, and that projects would be a more likely source of EDA funding than human capital. Because again, when you look at everything that's here, it's a lot of getting everything set up. So let's see what 1 year of them, now that everything's set up, what are they going to be doing during that year?
Okay.
Specifically because they got that huge grant to do, and they need the staff to run that grant and get the data and see what that grant actually produces.
Sure.
I will say that I had a chance to review the report. It does recap a lot of the work that they did throughout the year. I will say it's, it appears to be a little bit on the gloomy side, and I don't know that that really is the reality of what our economic picture is like in New Ulm. But again, it is a report. I do see that they realize that grant funding is not a financially viable business model, but there is no information in here on how they will become financially independent and unreliant on human capital funding from the EDA. However, if this is the last year we do plan to fund that, again, human capital investment, then they can work on their goals independently. Do we need to assign, will the current representation from EDA remain the same for this year? We had myself and Michelle serving as attending the meetings and things like that. I'm assuming that would.
That was an area I would be willing to take on in terms of having an EDA representation at those meetings. And
I also feel strongly that I would like to be involved in those conversations as well.
We'll bring that up at the next meeting to do a vote for election of.
Is that something that we will have in the contract still, or
Yeah.
agreement?
Yep, that'll be in there.
Okay. Looking for a motion to receive this report?
make a motion to receive the New Ulm, or New Bricks end of year report.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the report? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion does carry. There being no further business before this, we are adjourned.
Good job.
Thank you.